All right, so what we have in front of us is question one from the 2022 AP Calculus AB exam free response section where the calculator is required. We're going to talk through how to solve all the different pieces of this problem in the video, and we're going to talk about how to make sure we maximize the points, how to get every point off this question. So each free response question is worth 9 points, and we want all 9 of those points when we get done with it. So this problem is telling us that from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., the rate at which vehicles arrive at a certain toll plaza is given by this formula right here, where the t is the number of hours after 5 a.m., and that the formula A of t is talking to us about the vehicles per hour. And then they're telling us some crazy stuff about the traffic flowing smoothly, which I guess just puts us in a good mood. So from there, let's see what they want us to do. So part A wants us to come through and write but not evaluate, which is my favorite kind of problem. I just set it up and we get our points. An integral that talks about the total number of vehicles that arrive from 6 a.m., which is a t equals 1, to 10 a.m., which is a t equals 5. When you're wanting to find the total amount of something, total amounts of something is always an integral game. Integrals are an accumulation tool. So when we want to find the total amount of something, we're looking to find the integral of it. So in this problem, we would be finding the integral from a lower bound of 1, because that's the starting amount they wanted, to an upper bound of 5. And then inside there would be what we're trying to add up, which would be the rate here. So 450 times the sine of 0.62, oops, don't close that too soon, t, and then we would put a dt at the end. Be careful on these problems when you go to set them up, because you have to consider there are some situations where they talk about total distance example is one you've probably seen before. And in that situation, when you talk about a total distance, you need to make sure that you're calculating everything as a positive. And so in those scenarios, you would usually put an absolute value bar around this equation here. This problem, because we're talking about how things are arriving is always going to be a positive amount. Right? If you talk about a negative arrival, that doesn't make much sense. Negative arrival is really, I guess you would call it a departure more than arriving. So we're talking about how many are arriving. So this is always positive, and therefore we technically wouldn't need the absolute value bars. I think they would give you full marks on it because that formula would be the same regardless. But, something to be mindful of when you're talking about the total amount of something. You have to consider whether these things are positive or negative and how that matters towards your total. So here, all we needed to do was write that down, and once we wrote that down, we got our full points. So I don't think it was much of a point, but you would have gotten 1 point right there for getting that much of the problem. Then on part B now wants us to go ahead and find the average value of the rate, and then conveniently it's the same amounts. It's t equals 1 to t equals 5. Well, the average value formula is an integral formula that you just have to have memorized, right? It's one of those ones you got to come into the test knowing like the back of your hand. So the average value formula looks like 1 over b minus a times the integral from a to b of whatever you're trying to find the average of dx. So for our model here, we would come through, we would have a lower bound of 1, we would have an upper bound of 5, and then our formula that we're trying to find the average of is that original formula. So that's the 450 square root of the sine of 0.6t dt. And then up in front here, our b and our a we now know. I usually do this as the last part of the formula. This would be 1 over 5 minus 1. So putting that formula down right there, that's 1 point on this question. So make sure you put your formulas down. They like to see that you understand where this came from. Now, to get the answer out of this is something we can do in our calculator. And so what we're going to do is just take advantage of the fact that this is a calculator required section and do it in the calculator. So in Y1, what I would put is I would start off, and to make my life easy so I don't have to multiply my integral answer by this fraction at the end, because it's a constant, I could technically slide it inside the integral here. So I'm going to slide it into my calculator when I graph it. So this would be 1 over 5 minus 1 is 4. So I'm going to put the 1/4 right there, and then I'm going to multiply that by the full equation. So 450 sine of 0.6t, and then I guess when we're graphing, we wouldn't call that a t, we'd call that an x. So put that into y1. Then from there, you're going to graph that. And then step 3 of the process is you're then going to do a second calc. And in the calc menu, we're going to choose the number 7 option, which is integral of f of x dx. And so from there, the calculator is then going to ask us a few questions. We'll answer those questions, and in the end, we'll hit enter, and at the bottom of the screen, it's going to say the integral of f of x dx equals, and whatever it equals right there, that's going to end up being our answer. So let's run through the calculator. Open up the calculator, go to the y equals. When we're dealing with trig functions, I mean, the entire AP test is in radian mode. So just make sure you default your calculator to radian mode at the very start. You got to reset your calculators anyways, so usually it just defaults to radian. So as long as you don't touch it, you should be fine. So here we're going to type in that equation. So 1/4 and then 450 square root of the sine of 0.62 x, and then close that thing. And now we're going to graph it. So then we hit graph. And now, once we've graphed it, we really honestly don't even care much about what the graph looks like. It's sometimes helpful on these problems. Sometimes it's not a big deal. We just need to make sure that our x window is large enough to take in our bounds. And the default is -10 to 10, so we're good on that. So I'm going to hit second and then the calc menu up at the top. And now inside there, I'm going to choose the number 7 option, which is integral of f of x dx. I hit enter on that. I'm going to type in my lower limit. So my lower limit is 1. I'm going to type in my upper limit. The upper limit on our integral, our upper bound, is 5. We hit enter, and then we can see at the bottom of the screen there that we have our integral of f of x dx, and they're going to give us our value 375.537, so that would be our average value. So this would be 375.53, and then we'd round that to a 7, so 537. And never forget your units. This is the average value of the rate, right? So this is the average value of the rate, and the rate was vehicles per hour. So what we want here is vehicles per hour. And that's going to be our answer for part B, and that right there is the second point that you can earn on this question. So there's part B. And now we're going to head over and hit up part C. So part C says, is the rate at which the vehicles are arriving at the toll plaza increasing or decreasing? When I see words like increasing or decreasing, that is sort of like bells and whistles are going off that I should be doing a first derivative. So increasing would be if my first derivative is positive, right? Because that tells me that the graph is headed up. Decreasing would be telling me that my first derivative is negative. That would tell me my graph is headed down. So what we want to know specifically right now is what's happening at 1. And so on this problem, what we're trying to find out is what does a prime of 1 equal? And they're not asking us for the amount it's increasing or decreasing. We just need to know if it's increasing or decreasing. Well, again, the beautiful part about this is that this is on the calculator required section. So to find our derivative value, we just need to use our calculator again. So in y1 right now, we're going to go back in and we're basically just going to get rid of that 1/4 that was in there from the average value setup. And we're just going to put in our original equation. And then from there, we're going to graph that. And then we are going to go ahead and we're going to hit this time a second calc. And then we're going to choose the number 6 option in that menu, which is dy dx. And then we're going to have to tell it where we want it to do it at. And because we're talking about where x is 1, t is 1, we'll type in 1, we'll hit enter, and at the bottom of the screen, we're going to get dy dx equals. And again, we don't really care about the value, we just care about whether it's positive or negative. So we open back up our calculator, go back into our y equals, and again, we can just kind of delete this off of here, and that's what we want to graph. So we graph that, And then we're going to get back into that calc menu. We're going to hit second, choose that calc menu, button above trace at the very top. And then this time we want the number 6 option. We want the derivative at that point. So we hit enter on that. Then we tell it where to take the derivative. We want the derivative at 1. So I type in 1, I hit enter, and then at the bottom of the screen you can see that it says dy dx equals 148.947. So we get at the bottom here 148.947. So a prime is equal to 148.947. Getting that much out right there, that's 1 point. And then you go ahead and you need to answer the actual question. So is it increasing or decreasing? Well, because it's positive, it tells us that it's increasing. And you would say because the derivative is positive at t equals 1. So telling them that the derivative is positive at t equals 1 answers the y, and that's telling us the other point on this. So that's 1 point right there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points through the first part, 1 point for the answer here, and 1 point for the justification, telling them that a positive derivative tells us that it's increasing. And then we'll finish up part D in the next video. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, please click that like button and subscribe. And also share it with your friends and anyone else you know who might be crying about an upcoming AP Calc test. You can find more videos from me, more sample AP Calc questions, and my complete AP Calc study guide over at my website, apcalcprep.com. Have a great one.